Uh-huh. So basically, this piece here, this is 2 blankets and a handkerchief. This was before the United States became a nation. Henry Bouquet reported to a British officer, his name was General Amherst, and they were trying to figure out how to get rid of Indians. And so there was a smallpox epidemic that was running rampant, and their hospitals were full of smallpox victims. And so what they decided to do, and I can read the letter here, it's a pity that a good man like myself potentially could be sacrificed. He said, I wish we could use the Spaniards' method and just hunt them down like dogs. And then he calls extirpate, which means just wipe out the vermin, and he calls the Native Americans vermin. And so what he ends up doing is he ends up going and getting blankets from the smallpox hospital, where a lot of people are dying of smallpox. He folds them up, he gets a handkerchief and a couple of blankets, and he takes them to some Native Americans and gives them as gifts. And he's fully clothed in his uniform. He's fully, in many ways, protected, because then he strips down, he burns his uniform or whatever. But the Native Americans are naked. They don't wear a lot of clothes. And so they take the blankets, they sleep with them, and they contract the disease. And if you've ever seen anybody with smallpox, or pictures of anyone with smallpox, I haven't ever seen a person with smallpox, but I've seen pictures. It's the most ugly, physically grotesque thing you've ever seen. Their white pus bubbles are just like warts all the way up the body. There's no space in between. And so what I ended up doing is I said, how could I communicate this story? How could I communicate this bioterrorism to others? And so I went and ordered online 2 military blankets because it's the military that took them the blankets. And then I began needle felting what smallpox looks like on a larger scale. And it took me a long time, and I did 2 blankets. I only brought 1 here to Austria. And then I actually decided, I have to do a handkerchief. I said, you know what, I'm going to actually print, screen print, digital print. I did both, actually. The actual letter that I found in an archive and put it on a handkerchief. And then there's his name, Henry Bouquet. So it's not like this mystery. It's not like somebody said, oh, did that really happen? No, it happened, and he did it, and he's saying, I'm doing this, and I'm a good man. But he's which is astounding and astonishing, that he himself could actually do that and still think himself a good man, although I understand the fear. So that part, so that's how I told this story. And it's fairly effective. When people look at it, my kids, they're like, oop, nope, I don't want to use that blanket. Nope, I'm not going to cuddle up in that blanket. No thanks. So kind of craziness. This is called The Scarlet Letters of Dead Presidents. We have a story called The Scarlet Letter. It was written about a woman who committed adultery, and because that was such a bad, bad sin and crime, she was forced to wear a scarlet letter to confess her sins. And so as a result, I've used kind of that idea from The Scarlet Letter, and I had, or let me just say this, that the dollar bills were embroidered with scarlet lettering and embroidering stitched with a machine. And these 2 are George Washington, obviously. They're on the $1 bill. He was our first president of the United States. He was known by the Seneca as the town destroyer because over a 5-year period he destroyed 30 Seneca towns. He's known as a hero. George Washington chopped down the cherry tree. It's a traditional story in our culture. And but he was also known, he allowed his troops in Iroquois areas to, I put here that he's the Red Skinner because we have a word we call the Indians Redskins. Well, he allowed the Iroquois to be skinned from the waist down, and their skin used as boot coverings. So once they killed people in a village, they allowed them to skin them from the waist down and take their skin and use them. And so I put here that he was the Red Skinner. He might be an American hero, yes, but he's also, for natives, he's not so much an American hero. Abraham Lincoln was our 16th president of the United States, and he was assassinated and became a martyr. He's the great emancipator because he freed blacks from slavery. But although while he was freeing blacks, he became an oppressor for Native Americans. He was a native lyncher. He was stopping African American lynchings or slave lynchings, but at the same time, he went ahead and gave the order for 38 Native Americans to be hung to death for crimes they didn't commit. And they were holy men and leaders, and what he was trying to do was take away the power structure in Native American communities. And that happened in Minnesota. Again, he's a great American hero, but in some ways, he wasn't considered a hero to the Native Americans. Andrew Jackson, who is responsible for Indian removal from the East Coast, I call him the Indian giver because the Indian giver means, they typically called Indians, you're an Indian giver if you give something and then take it back. So I'm going to give you this and then I take it back. Well, so that was a custom for Indians that you exchange gifts. So when it initially started, the Indians would give a gift, but they would expect something back, and when nothing came back, they would take their gift back. But Andrew Jackson kept telling the natives, oh, it'll be fine, we're going to give you lands and it'll be good. But he basically removed Indians from 100,000 square kilometers. That's a lot of space. And so I call him the great Indian giver. So he's the best Indian giver of them all because he told them, he would give them something and then he took what they had. He's also the great patronizer. Although he was considered a war hero and a patron, he was telling the Indians, it's okay. It's going to be okay. We'll take care of you. It's going to be okay. And thousands of people died. So this is Grandma's prominent nipples. And basically, it's kind of this idea, in America we have a term called home-brewed. And so when something's home-brewed, it's made at home, like home-brewed beer or home-brewed tea or whatever. And so it always comes from the mother, though. It always seems to come from the feminine and from the ideal. And so basically, that's what I did. I embroidered nipples on tea bags to have this idea of the feminine presence in everything cooked, everything that we make, everything that runs the household. And so for me, and then created the nipples there coming from the tea bags, letting you know that that is this whole feminine identity. It's not one of survival, but more of nurturing and caring and making sure that the family is functioning and healthy. These last works are encaustic works, and they just tell a story about the chicken dance, basically. And it's a spiritual dance. And here is the initial panel, and it talks about how they're walking in a circle, and it talks about moving from self into the spirit, where you empty yourself in a way. And so this is him, and he's praying, he's getting ready, and then he does his dance, and then he comes away kind of flying in the spirit dance kind of motive. So he kind of jumps off the cliff as a youngster, and then becomes this mature flying being spiritually. So that's kind of where this one is at, and this more tells a narrative. It was framed, but I couldn't bring a frame, so that's pretty much it.